Good morning. Thank you for saying good morning back to me. I appreciate that. I was going to be like, please don't make me ask again. I appreciate all of y'all being there. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Pastor Brian McDowell. I'm on staff here at the church as the full-time youth pastor, also in charge of a couple other little things, but also in charge of like the building things that we're doing with the AC unit, with other things like that, roof and stuff like that, all kinds of different special projects around the church. Basically, I'm coming in as trying to take some things off of our pastor. Our pastor is overworked and he's got a lot on his plate, and so I'm trying to come in and help also be a better youth pastor, but also trying to take some things off of him as well. So I appreciate y'all being here. Pastor Eric is at his daughter's wedding yesterday. Had their daughter's wedding yesterday. His oldest girl got married, and we are not dealing with the same emotions that he is this morning. So I'm thankful for that. I have two little girls of my own, and I'm not looking forward to that day. So at all. But So let me get into what I feel like the Lord has laid on my heart to share with y'all this morning. Raise your hand if you were here last week for Pastor Eric's message about tension, attention, and intention. Cool, I'm going to have to do some recapping. Okay, so this is why I wanted to ask that question, because Saturday everybody raised their hand, so I was like, let's just get into it. So what we talked about last week, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it, but what we're going to do is we're going to see how these phrases of tension, attention, and intentions apply in our lives. The first thing I want to talk about is how tensions are going to rise. They're going to happen in our lives. There is always going to be some sort of tension throughout our days. There's going to be something that rises up. If you live in a broken, fallen, sinful world, you're going to experience tension. It's just going to happen. So what we find is that when tensions rise up, where does it cause us to put our attention? Where does it cause us to put our focus on? Did we put our focus on fear? Or we put it on worry? Did we put it on myself to handle this tension? Or do we fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith? And see, when we realize that where we put our attention, it shows us what our intentions are. When we come and we say, okay, I want to fix my eyes on Jesus, then I want to make sure that my intentions are correct in this situation. What is in my heart that is causing me to do this going forward? So if you didn't catch up last week's message, I would highly encourage you to do it. But we're going to recap a lot of that because we're going to go through a story in Mark chapter 14 of Jesus going through very similar experience of the tension that he's going to feel. We're going to discuss the tension that he's going to feel. We're going to discuss the attention that he fixes his eyes on, and we're going to see the intentions of his heart. But the phrase that I want to start this message off with is, Pastor Eric did a great job of starting that when tensions arise, here's how you handle it and here's how you go forward. I want to focus this message is on before tensions arise, how do you prepare for it? Because I feel like that in the life of Jesus that we're going to see that he prepared for this high tension moment through a lifetime to bring him to this point in the Garden of Gethsemane. That we're going to see that his past and the way he prepared for that moment is going to shine through, and it's going to help him with his attention because he knows his intentions. Y'all ready to dive into it? Sweet. All two of you. Let's go. All right. So let's look at those verses. Yeah, I got to open my Bible. I'll get there in a second. Mark chapter 14, verse 32 is where we're going to start off. It says, they went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. And he took with him Peter and James and John and began to get greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch. And going a little further, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. See, we take a look here, and what I want to look at first is this tension that Jesus is feeling in this moment. What is this tension? I want to better understand the tension that he is feeling right now. So let's look at the first word that is used to describe him. It is distressed. Now, I'm new to the studying the Old Greek, and I'm getting into it. I'm trying to learn how to do that. So if you use you can use Google for this. You can actually type in the verse that you want to look up and type in lexicon afterwards, and it'll take you to a concordance. It'll take you to the original Greek or Hebrew language that it was written and the phrases and how it breaks down. So I did that for these three words: distressed. I did it for troubled and sorrowful. And I find that it was quite of a shock for me for distressed. I don't know what this word is. Anybody want to give it a go? I'm not going to try to pronounce it. But I know that when we work our way down here to the definition, we'll see it means to amaze, to be amazed, to be greatly astonished, and awestruck. And that kind of just blew my mind a little bit there for a minute. I've talked to some people, I've looked it up multiple ways, and each time it comes back to this very same Greek word that means to be amazed, to be astonished. And so I asked myself, okay, what has Jesus got to be astonished or amazed or awestruck at in this moment? And I'm not in the mind of Christ, so don't get me wrong. I'm not going to try to tell you exactly what he was feeling or thinking, but I'm going to try to figure out what was he amazed by. So if we go to 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 19 through 21 says, "But with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without blemish or spot, he was foreknown before the foundation of the world was made manifest in the last times for the sake of you." What we know is that the plan of salvation was already made manifest, like predestined before the beginning of time. And it was about to become complete. It was about to become finished. This plan of salvation that allowed one perfect sacrifice for the sins of the world was about to become complete. And I don't know about you, but I can't think about the plan of salvation. I can't think about that from the beginning of time. God had this planned out to save you and to me. He knew who you were before the foundation of the earth. He is offering salvation to you through his son, Jesus. And Jesus is going, it's about to happen. It's about to happen. It's about to happen. It's about to become complete. I'm about to give the greatest gift ever given. That makes me awestruck. That makes me astonished. See, the enemy had had his way in this world for far too long, and Jesus was about to defeat him. He was about to squash him, and he was about to win the victory for you and for me. So the second thing that he was feeling was troubled. And again, let's go to the original Greek, and it's to be distressed, which I thought was ironic. When the first distress didn't mean distressed, but whatever. So it means to feel fear or lack of courage. And I struggled with this just a little bit because I had to ask myself, did Jesus experience fear in this moment? Did he experience fear? What was he afraid of? And I think that the only thing that Jesus could have been afraid of in this moment was the pain and torment that he knew that he was about to endure. See, if we go to Isaiah chapter 52, verse 14 says, his appearance so marred beyond human semblance. His body was going to be beyond human recognition. If Isaiah knew it, Jesus knew it. Jesus knew the physical pain and torment that he was going to endure. He knew the suffering that his body was about to take, that his body was not even going to be recognizable as human. That would strike some fear in the heart of a human being. He was also, I think he was feeling fear of the pain that he was about to experience. According to Isaiah 51, describes that Jesus was about to drink the dregs of the bowl of God's wrath. God's wrath towards sin was about to be poured onto Jesus on the cross, all the way down to the very bottom. See, Jesus was about to take the guilt of every sin committed on earth from now and from the beginning of time until he comes back, he was about to take the guilt of all of that on his shoulders. He was about to feel it spiritually. He was about to experience greater pain and torment that I could ever imagine. See, the scripture also says that he felt sorrowful. Sorrowful means engulfed in sadness, grief, or sorrow. The only thing that I can think that Jesus might be sorrowful about in this moment is that he sees how sin has ruled this world. And he sees how sin can ruin your life. He's seen how sin from the beginning of time, from Adam and Eve, all the way until he returns. He sees how sin comes into our hearts and can just rob you of life. It says in Ezekiel that sin causes his heart to hurt. It hurts the heart of God to experience sin. He was feeling sorrowful because he saw what sin was going to do to your life. He felt sorrowful. See, he was feeling these three major emotions all at one time. He was feeling so much tension that scripture says that his blood vessels and his sweat glands ruptured together and he sweat blood. See, this is a tension I can't wrap my brain around. I'm doing my best to describe to you what I think that tension could have been, but I can't do it justice. Because here you see that he is experiencing extreme tension. See, I think there's two things that we can learn from that tension. Two things that we can learn from the tension that Jesus experienced in the garden. And listen to me, no matter what tension you're going through, it's nothing compared to the tension that he's already been through. He can handle it. He can handle what you have going on in your life. It doesn't matter if it's temptation, because he's experienced all temptations. It says he was tempted in every way, but without sin. So no matter what your temptation you're feeling, no matter what the tension you're feeling in life, my Jesus can handle it. So don't be afraid to bring it to him. Don't think that it's too big for him. Don't think that he's not interested in your tension. He is. And we're going to see here in a second how interested he is in your tension. Let's keep going and look at how his attention and what he fixed his attention on for a second. I think there's a few options of what Jesus could have put his attention on if he wanted to. Okay? I think the first one is kind of like whenever I was a kid, my mom used to say the worst words to me ever. Just wait till your dad gets home. That's the words that strikes fear in the heart of a child. And you all know what I'm talking about out here. That feeling is when your stomach goes to knots, you feel like you can't eat. You don't want to snack. Every other time of the day you want to snack, but no, I can't eat. You actually feel like doing what I used to do, and that was just I'm going outside, and I'd disappear into the woods. I'd go hide. Or I'd go hide in my closet if it was raining or something. When I hear my dad's truck coming down the driveway, I was like, that tension was just going crazy, and I wanted to just run and hide. I think that Jesus could have fixed his attention on running and hiding. I think he could have, because there's a story in before when he's in Nazareth, and they want to kill him. They want to throw him off a cliff. He says, "Nope, I'm leaving." And he just splits them and just walks on out of there and says, "Nope, it's not the day. Today is not the day for me to die. I'm gone." And he just splits them and just walks. He says he literally just stopped them in their tracks, and he just walked right out. So who's to say he couldn't do that in this moment in the Garden of Gethsemane, that he couldn't have chosen to say, "Nope, not today. This is not the day. I'm out, taking my 12 guys, and we're gone." He could have fixed his attention on fleeing and going somewhere else. He also could have fixed his attention in Matthew chapter 26. It talks about how Peter took out his sword and cut off a dude's ear. And I don't know if it was a dude, but it was some guy. But it's cut off this guy's ear. And Jesus ended up healing it. And Jesus says, "Hey, Peter, don't you know that if I wanted to fix my attention on fighting back, all I got to do is ask my Father, and he would send 12 legions of angels down here to fight back for me." He could have fixed his attention on fighting back. He could have called down angels, armies, and said, "Let's go. We're kicking the Romans out of Jerusalem. This is the time. We're going to fight back." Not doing that. He could have done that. He could have fixed his attention on that. But what did he fix his attention on? See, Jesus hit his face. It says he fell to the ground. I do this at home whenever I'm really exhausted. I just go to my bed and I just go. And I feel like with that tension that Jesus is feeling, he didn't care if it was the ground. He hit his face before the Father. And he spilled his guts. He was completely honest with the Father here. He literally says, if there is any way possible, please take this cup from me. If there is any way possible that we could not go through with this, please do it. That's pretty brutal honesty with the Father, saying, please change your mind. Please do something else. But we see that Jesus chose to put his attention on the Father. Isaiah 53, verse 10 and 11. This is what Jesus fixed his attention on. He fixed his attention on it. Verse 10 says, yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He had to put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring, and he shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hands. Out of anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, Jesus, my servant, make many accounts righteous. He shall bear their iniquities. He chose to fix his attention on who he was supposed to be. He chose to fix his attention on what God called him to do. That's what he chose to fix his attention on. I think there's a few truths that we can learn from where we see that Jesus fixed his attention. I think the first thing that we can learn is that God can handle your honesty. God can handle your insecurities. He can handle your flaws. He can handle your fears. He can handle you struggling to obey. When God's telling you to do something, you're like, Lord, I really don't feel like. When he's telling you to go pray for that person, like Pastor Eric says, he can handle you telling him that. Jesus did. He can handle your honesty and telling him, Lord, I am struggling to follow through with what you're telling me to do here. We also learn from the example of Jesus that Jesus chose to fall before the Father because he was used to falling before him. See, this was not the first time that Jesus had an honest moment with God. This was not the first time that Jesus had prayed that day. This is not the first time that Jesus had come to God. Jesus did not just come to the Father when he needed help. We see throughout Jesus' life, he spends many times, he had built up a relationship with the Father. Jesus regularly got alone with God and had a working, normal relationship with the Father. So when the moment of greatest need came, he knew exactly what he needed to do. He hid his face before the Father because he hid his face before the Father when things were good, when things were right, when things were okay, when things weren't in tension. He hid his face before the Father. We all have that relative or friend from high school that only calls you when they need something, right? When you see your phone ring and you're like, they must need something. Or maybe we're that person. But the question that hit me was, am I that person to God? Like is the only time that I pray or that I fall before my face before God is when I need something? When tensions are high or when I'm going through a really hard struggle? Is that the only time that I hit my face before God? Because that's not the example that we see in Jesus' life. We see that before the tension came, Jesus had a relationship. So he was prepared for this tension because he knew what he was going to do when the tension came was to run to the Father. So do we run to the Father only when things are difficult, or do we run to him even when things are good so that when they become difficult, we know where to go? The third truth that I think that we can learn from the attention of where we see Jesus is, Pastor Eric said last week that the proper response to tension is trust. And I think I've seen that on social media. I've seen that somebody gave us a gift card for coffee and it said tension to trust. So I think that's something that really sank in for a lot of us. But I agree that the proper response to tension is trust. So the proper response to tension is trust, but isn't it easier when you start trusting him before the tension? Like, isn't it easier to trust him in the small things so that when the big things come, we know to trust him? So the question is, am I only running to him when my tensions are high or when I really need to trust him? Or am I trusting him in the day-to-day small things, all in my heart? Proverbs chapter 3 says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not in your own understandings. So is that only when the tension rises, or is that all the time? It's all the time. One of my biggest flaws, and I'll be stand up here, right up here in a minute to you, one of my biggest flaws is not trusting Jesus in the small things. I go through my day and I look at something that rises and I say, can I handle that? Yeah, I'll handle that. I'll just take care of it. I'll take care of it. And not whenever the big things rise or when the big things come, I don't always run to him whenever those things come. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get to the point of, maybe I need to talk to Jesus about this. But when we trust him in the small things, when those times of high, huge, big, heavy tensions rise in our life, we will automatically trust in him because we know that he is trustworthy. Let's look at the intentions of Jesus in this example. What's Jesus' intentions? When you read this passage, you see that Jesus' true intentions were revealed at this point. I do not believe that Jesus in this moment had to evaluate his intention in life, because his intentions in life were already established. Let me say that again. He did not have to get to this point of high tension and go, ooh, what is my intention in life? Like, what am I going to do when this moment of high tension and temptation comes? He knew what he was going to do before the high tension. You want to know how I know that? Even when he was 12 years old, when he got left behind in the temple from his parents come up to him and he's like, didn't you know that I was going to be about my Father's business? Like, didn't you know that I was going to be obeying God? At 12 years old, he already had a lifestyle to where he was like, you know that I'm following Jesus in all that I do. Or following the Father in all that I do. We see that again in John chapter 5. It says, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, and only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, the Son does likewise. John chapter 12:49 says, for I have not spoken of my own authority, but the Father who sent me has given me a commandment, what to say and what to speak. And then Matthew 20:25 says, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus' intentions in life was already established in him before this moment of high tension. And I truly believe that that's why whenever he came to the Father in this high tension, he was immediately able to say, but not my will, but yours be done. He was immediately able to turn to that because his intentions in life was already established. He knew that he was going to obey the Father in that moment because his entire life was built off of obedience. About a month ago, I'm in a D group with Pastor Eric and Nick Key. Those of you who know Nick Key, he's the tag meister that tries to tag you in the hallways or whatever. If you see somebody walking around with a label on their back that's not meant to be there, it's his fault. So, but sometimes he asks questions, and this is why I love, well, one of the reasons why I love this man, but I want this man in my life is because he's not afraid to ask me really difficult questions. He's not afraid to challenge me on things and call me out on stuff. I got to have people like that in my life if I'm going to stay humble, and Nick keeps me very, very, very humble. Very humble. But he asked me this question about a month ago that honestly just shook me. It just rocked me. He said, Brian, what is at your core? What is at your very core? He said, imagine if all the labels and all that you have is completely stripped away. What is the one thing that you could not go through life doing? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. You're going to have to give some time to think about that one. Like, that's a pretty deep question for me. I was like, I'm going to have to really put some time into that. And be honest, I came here to church and I hit my face before God because I was like, I don't know what's at my core. But through the coming days, I spent a lot of time praying, and I realized I did not like what I had at my core. See, because God changed the question for me a little bit. He changed the question to, Brian, when you're alone and no one else is around, what do you do and what do you pursue? I'll let that one sit for a second because that's where it sat on me. It sat on me heavy because I was like, I don't like what I do and what I pursue when no one else is around. See, to me, that's my core. That's my intentions that I'm going to live out. And Jesus had that already established in his life. He knew his core. He knew what his intentions were going to be. So my question is, for me, and for us, what is at your core? What is going to be your answer to Jesus when he lays this tension out before you? And he says, you got to choose this or this, and this comes up in life, and you have to choose this and this. Is your yes on the table already? Is your yes sitting there saying, God, this morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to say, whatever you call me to, whatever you ask me to do, I'm saying yes to it. Is that on the table for you? See, because I think that in this most extreme moment of Jesus' life, that Jesus knew what he was going to accomplish in his death. I think that he knew that he was going to, that God's plan was trustworthy. I think he knew that his death was not going to be in vain. I think he knew that his death was going to free us from sin and death. And I think that in this moment of extreme tension, he had done the preparation beforehand to know what his answer was going to be. And I think that if it wasn't for that preparation, if it wasn't how Jesus handled that tension, if it wasn't for where he fixed his attention and his intentions of his heart coming out, I don't think that Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2 could be true, that he experienced joy. It was for the joy of salvation that he was able to step forward towards that cross and towards that suffering. And so my question is this, and this is my challenge to us all, is what would life look like for you if you woke up in the morning and you first of all acknowledged that there was going to be tension today? You just said, all right, Lord, it's going to happen. It's going to happen today. I'm going to feel tension today. It's going to rise up. But before tension arises, I'm going to fix my eyes on Jesus. Before it rises, I'm going to start my day by putting my focus on where it belongs. My Savior, the one who's been here, done this, experienced all the tension I'm going to experience today. And what if we were to spend time and ask ourselves, what is at my core? What is my true intention in life? And I'm not talking about what is your destiny? I'm talking about what could you not go through life doing? And then we learn to trust the Lord in all things. What if we learn to trust him in everything that we have? We see in Jesus' life that he prepared for this moment. He prepared to be here. And so my challenge to you is this. Wake up in the morning and tell Jesus that whatever comes my way, I'm saying yes to you. I'm saying yes to you. And I'm coming to you whenever the tensions come. So that's my challenge to us today. I also want to just share with you this. There's somebody here, and I believe there's others here, that have never experienced, never seen, and never heard the suffering that Christ went through for you. That has never experienced that this moment of torment where Jesus chose you over all the pain, over all the torment, over all the suffering that he was about to experience. He chose to be obedient to the Father because he loves you. Because you are his creation. You are his child. He created you for a purpose and for a plan. And for 1 second, maybe this morning you were able to get a brief glimpse of, he did this for me. He did this for you. He did this for all of us.